Oh, wonderful. Floor is yours. Welcome.
The sound is breaking up, so I'm not hearing you, Jacques.
Oh dear. I'm sorry to hear that. I can hear you all right.
Can you? Oh, no, it was just breaking up then. I wasn't sure. Um, if it's my side of the. Can you hear me?
You are, but you do seem to be breaking up a bit.
Am I breaking up?
No,
I
now
hope not.
it seems to be fine.
Okay. So shall I start? Have you asked me to start yet? Because I wasn't sure
Please,
what you'd
please.
said.
Christine, you're good to go. Thank
Absolutely.
you. Yes.
Breaking up. Did you ask me to start?
Yes, please. So I think everyone's ready, and Jacques has introduced you with a poem. So
Okay. Thank you, Jacques. That was a lovely poem. I heard most of it. I just right at the end it broke up. Let me know if I'm breaking up. I'm not sure if the if it's a stable connection. But okay. Thank you for everyone for coming. I was hoping that I would be able to show my art. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So I'm struggling to I was struggling to get my Google photographs to come up on the screen. So I'll just have to manage. I might show you something from my cell phone if that works. But it's just that I've been using this art method, which has been very much a process, a process for me to really kind of engage with the body and with feelings, and then to explore. And after that, it sort of it feeds into my writing, and I just thought it'd be interesting to show you that. But I can always send you a link that you can see them online. Right. So my writing this year and for the last few years has been very involved with very preoccupied with a great grandfather that some of you know about, and he he came into my life about 20 years ago, even though it was 100 years ago that he actually lived, and he was in the Boer War, and his I found his Boer War memoirs, and ever since then he's kind of been really kind of urging me, I think, from the grave to tell his story. So this is what I'm doing at the moment. So I'll start off with that, and then I'll move into some other poems. So I don't know if I can, let me just see if it works if I show you a photograph. So this was a photograph I found 20 years ago of him in the Boer War. Let me just see if it, if I show this to you, can you see that? It's not very clear, is it? Yeah, so this is a photograph I found in a book about the Boer War 20 years ago, when it was the anniversary of the Boer War, and all these books were coming out, and I discovered him in this book and realized he was my great grandfather. I knew very little about him except that he had been in the Free State Artillery. And so on and off for the last 20 years, I've been researching him and writing about him. So here is the first poem. It's called Willem's War, 1899 to 1902. I've consented to hear the dead speak. In my dream, he keeps talking, tells me his stories of riding his horse across the landscape. My memories come through my mother, but I'm thinking back through my father. I'm shifting, shape-shifting, being inhabited by his ghost. In my dream, he tells me his tales. It's that December night. I hear music, a battle song. The horses keep time to the beat. The smell of moor coffee on the fire, their singing of victory, of homes far away, of riding across the land. He speaks of his legends, not the unspeakable, not the unthinkable, but of hiding in the kloofs, his stories, not the unimaginable, but a landscape named for great rivers, and crossing a land not yet a country. It's impossible to think of anything else but him and his white horse. And so then one of the projects I did one of the processes I did in the art was spent some time with some brown paper that I folded and twisted and then eventually tore into strips. And we were working with the body, and it was all about how food gets digested, talking about digestion, how one digests stuff. And so this paper that I tore into long strips, I twisted, and they started looking like the intestines to me. And then further processes of drawing and placing them and thinking about what I was writing about, which was Willem at that time and his beginning of the Boer War, where he moved from Bloemfontein down to the across the Orange River into sort of Northern Cape, the south side of the Northern Cape, towards Murraysburg and Stormberg, where his first battle began. And so I started thinking about that. I'm going to try and show you this picture. So these are the brown strips of paper, if you can see that. And so they become intestines and then become a river. And I started researching and writing about the Orange River. And so this is called Orange River. Named for its color, named for a prince, named for a great snake guarding its jewel, named simply a boundary. I follow the river on its long journey to its source. A bridge spans history, unspools me. Back more than a century. There's blood that can never be washed away. The river begins its journey high in the Drakensberg, rises and ribbons across the land, through rock, through ancient sediment, hard as carbon, iron, diamonds. I look closer, a capacious ecosystem. Fish eagles fly, otters play, ancient people once bathed, made up songs to sing on its banks. Like grandfather on his journey across the land, I journey to my source. And then again with Willem, towards the end of his story, I write him back home when he's back. He's lost his war, but he's alive, and he fetches his wife and 6 children in the concentration camps down at Norvalspont. And they return back to Bloemfontein, where, of course, everything's been destroyed and everything's in chaos, and they have to start all over again. Schools are not functional for a few years. Food is probably, not that reliable. Farms have been destroyed. But he actually finds a way of of starting again and actually living a successful life. He and his wife Martha have 11 children eventually, and he lives a long and good life. And this is Sunday lunch towards the end of his life. He sits outside peeling sweet potatoes for lunch, a task best passed on to others who really know what they're doing. But Martha is busy with those things and deemed him the stripper of skins with nothing but a dull knife. He pulls the brown husks away, revealing golden orange flesh, boerepatat they called in the Cape, the colour of the moon over the flat Karoo plains. Boriman, he says it again, Boriman. Later, Martha will take them, bake them in syrup made from cinnamon and brown sugar for their lunch, the aroma rising, and he's eating the moon over the Karoo. Okay. I may get to some of the others, but I'm now moving to cities. So I've been quite occupied with writing about cities and working with cities in my art. I saw the film The Brutalist earlier this year, and that impacted me hugely and has fed into some of my art and also some of my writing. So this is a linking poem between the great-grandfather and the next lot of poems, and it's set in Johannesburg. It's called Winter City. I stop at the traffic light. A man is sitting there on bricks, hunched before a brazier, made from an old paint tin, holes punched into it. He's peeling an orange. On a dull day, the bright glow of the orange is like a coal in the brazier. He peels it slowly, round and round, one finger on the navel. Orange skin peeling down, spiraling, releasing a faint spray. Perhaps it's his breakfast. He's not in a hurry. Pith and peel pull away slowly, easily under his thumb and forefinger. He turns the fruit, holding it between forefinger and thumb like a little earth. He could be saying a prayer or writing a poem. He's so at one with the task. His focus and faith, the goal of a bright orange soul, aside from the cruelties of the July air. Okay, and so then the next city that I write about is Gaza. And I discovered when I was doing my art, because I had a pile of gauze and I was working with this, and at the same time watching images of TV of the bombing of Gaza. And I've discovered that the word gauze that so do you know what gauze is that we use for bandages? That was the gauze I used. Gauze comes from the Arabic the Gaza, which means a very finely, loosely woven cloth, and it's where we get that cloth from the weavers that used to weave in that area. And I was so moved by this, and by then I'd already discovered the Boer War babies that were dying in the Boer War, and the little coffins with their little swaddled bodies. And so I spent a lot of time making little babies out of gauze and swaddling them as little bodies. Can you see that? I'm so sorry I haven't got this file of photographs. So I made these little bodies, and I laid them on in different ways over different backgrounds. Here's a painting I did of a woman and the babies at the bottom, and putting them over other images. And so I wrote a few poems about that. The first one is called A Month in October. It's October 2023. A child needs 1,000 days. I know this to be true, but children's bodies fall from the sky. They float before my eyes in air of the hard night. Against language, the shrapnel of sound. Against compassion, the cacophony of war. All those thousands falling to the ground. Will soft waters ever pass over this hard, hard land? And going on from that, I collected stones on the beach, pebbles and things, and then I built a city, a bombed city with those, and put the babies into that bombed city. You can see that. And then this poem, so it's the rocks and the stones I collected represented blocks of concrete, and I placed the bodies, the little baby, the wrapped bodies in between them, and then wrote from that. And this one is called Concrete. All week I've been making cities from tissue paper and card, not concrete. I've punched holes into the tissue, glued the confetti on black card. Paper buildings, not concrete. I'm thinking of poets living in Kiev, Odessa, Gaza, writing their cities back into existence. Before they were buried in rubble, I swear there were young ones dreaming of bungee jumping, surfing, going fishing the next day. I wish I could kiss their dusty cheeks, wake them. It's too early to die. Wake up, I say. See the city I've built you. Tissue paper, not concrete. Wake up. Kiss me. It's too early to die. Someone must sing to the roosters, peel the oranges, preheat the oven. Yeah, so the cities I made were made from, this is the paper, the tissue paper and the card. And then I actually made a house out of tissue paper, a building, a sort of more of a cathedral, made that out of tissue paper, and then put the, you can't really see that one, put the bodies there for them. And then this poem came on after that. It's called Depends on the Day. Nothing here is neutral. Truth depends on the day. Depends on the weather of our hearts. Distractions, hearts displaced or simply out of order. Nothing here is neutral. Some are headed home in a box. Others limp into another confrontation. It depends on the weather of our hearts. There are those waxy-skinned and quiet, facing a cannon loaded with sounds. Nothing here is neutral. The sound of a man's upset stomach or a fight with a chicken bone in the throat. It all depends on the weather of our hearts. Truth will carry the memory of your part in this forever. Nothing here is neutral. It depends on the weather of our hearts. Yeah, so I think that was a response to the desperation I felt when there's nothing one can do, I mean, this is what, when I was younger, I was so idealistic and I would rage against everything. And as I get older, I just feel so helpless and there's just nothing I can do. And out of that, this next poem came also from Gaza, also about Gaza. And of course, it's, you know, it's not only Gaza, it's Kiev and it's Odessa and it's numerous places, and it goes back and it keeps happening. But here I've tried to find some hope. The sun always rises. That's what it's called. The sun always rises. Tonight in Gaza, someone is making her way through the rubble, the ruins. Someone is cooking over an open fire amid destruction. Someone's sweeping dust from a corner of a fallen room so she can make a bed on the floor. Someone shifts concrete, bricks, rubble. In the dark, flames from cooking fires leap across broken walls. Beams and roofs throw shadows between piles. Small lights from candles, lamps here, there, everywhere. Listen to the soft hum of people, the chatter around, cooking a meal. Someone sings softly, a lullaby. Someone's even found a dandelion in the rubble, picked it, placed it in a tin can. Today she will find something to bring light to her eyes, like the dandelion, its fierce lion face, bright yellow mane. A small sunrise, smiling from between the cracks, in the broken concrete, shattered stones, a tiny lion sun rising. And this poem is called Raven's Warning. And I don't know how it arrived, but it felt like, you know, ravens are often harbingers, or they are, or like crows, you know, they can see both sides and they can warn us. So I think it came out of that sort of feeling. Raven's Warning. In the dark of the night, I hear voices in the garden. All the present is gathered here. An ancient raven sits in a chair, tapping his cane under a thin moon. The night presses in. His voice rasps at first like charcoal, then his tongue loosens. You had to know all things pass and perish, he says. Terms of this earth's life are concluding, the burning, consuming. The burden of humans was to find the good, the true, to question. Grass just had to wave, birds just had to sing, but you had to read Spinoza in the garden while the light was good. You had to try to see roses because roses can't see themselves. You had to name these things in a language only you can read. Looking forward before the assemblage, he clicks his cane. You had to beat the darkness back, he says, bent over like a question mark. The unwise don't know what light is. All right. They will not carry your part in this. The grinding wine you thought you'd attend to later is the last shred of resistance. Listen, bumps and blips, the final thud of the earth's heart. Then bowed low, the raven stands, taps his cane, and is gone. Yeah, so that was quite a dire poem, dire warning. Okay, so have I still got some time?
Definitely.
Yes, Christine.
Okay. This one's now going more into those came out of my feeling of such helplessness and frustration and hopelessness and just, you know, just wishing that this world would wake up. And then my other concern is ecology and the earth. So this one is addressing that, I think. It's called Other Ways. It's early morning. The sun's rising. The tide's coming in. A surfer crosses the shallows. A couple walks the beach, their shapes reflected in water of burnished silver. There must be other ways to describe sunrise, daybreak, dawn, new day. Now darkness is falling. There must be other ways to describe sunset. What would you say if I tell you I meet emptiness everywhere? My heart slips too easily into its pockets. Up and down supermarket aisles, past cold-shouldered milk cartons, impartial tins of Italian tomatoes. When I go down to the Strand at the end of the day, at dusk, twilight, sunset, I can breathe again. Dancing light, a can on the surface of the sea, on the lagoon. My heart expands, fills the spaces around me so much that everything else is small, just black dots, and I am the whole beach and the sea, the river and the lagoon, all the fish and the birds too. Okay, and then what's the time? I wrote this one. It's called a double exposure poem. So it was finding two voices and then linking them in alternate lines to read as one poem. It was about why I write. So I've called it I Write, She Writes, They Write, a double exposure poem. I write to hold memory. She slept too long, and this is how she wakes. Stop the past from swallowing everything up. Tell the stories that weren't told or couldn't be. Tell someone, tell yourself. Because she's walked too far, filled many hats. I remember specifics. She writes to notice spaces between things. About the bruises, remember, don't forget them. Take them, make them into art. Find ways to capture, to fill the holes in the story, because she stopped praying. Pages are like leaves, and I love forests, and writing becomes her prayer. My poems and stories don't decay in the mud. Her hands are used to find these, not held in useless supplication. I write to remember what I love, like the forest, with new leaves unfolding, explaining themselves to themselves. Okay, and then I'll end with one that goes back to my great-grandfather Willem, and connects. So the project I'm working on is really connecting my great-grandfather and my father, my father was named for his grandfather, and I've been writing about the great-grandfather, but also linking it to my father. So this one's called Knives. A full moon gazes down. Moonbeams cut the darkness. There are 1,000 names for Earth. Now I stop glancing at my clock and try and focus, but I'm going back. 1965. Outside, cadet boys march the school fields. Girls practice bandaging knees and ankles. Are we being prepared for war? 150 years ago, Willem's father gave him a knife, a hunting knife. He's 18 and the military has come to Harrismith. He'll never forget it. Or when his horse took fright, reared up, a large black snake holding itself upright like a rod, flaring its hood. There was a white lightning strike down its front. Now back to Willem. His knife polished, wrapped in a small oilskin to prevent it rusting. His father guided his hand inside the buck to its heart so he could cut off the tip. Opa's canvas bag carried bait. His knife was for cutting off the fish's head. I'm in my father's surgery. His scalpel lives in the stainless steel sterilizer. Okay, then I've got two to my father. Also Willem Hendrik. Okay, I'll read White Shirt first. White Shirt. Now, out of the corner of my eye, I think I see you. You're outside in the courtyard. I move closer, but it's just your shirt hanging there, waving its arm in the wind, looking so alive, so crisp, so white, like Sarah's just ironed it. I remember it was a Saturday, hot, hot only as the Western Transvaal can be in February. It was my sports day. I had to go to school in uniform, my blue and white dress printed with little flowers, like a Liberty print, but we weren't little English girls. Sarah standing there with a laundry basket full of your washed shirts, the 5 you'd worn that week. I never forget how some mornings you'd throw shirt after shirt on the floor if it had the smallest crease. Red tie, blue tie, striped tie, spotted tie. As I was leaving, Sarah stood with the laundry basket filled with shirts and the linen off the beds. I fetched my bicycle, was off to school. I can't remember if I said goodbye. How that haunted me later. Had I said goodbye? And now, that white shirt waving in the courtyard, your white shirt, its arm lifting in the wind, looking so alive, like Sarah's just ironed it, waving goodbye, because I forgot if I ever said goodbye. Okay, and then this one's my father, the painter. I dream of my father. He's painting a picture of mountains and sea, clouds and rock. But it's raining. What's happening to the painting? The colors are running. Blue of the sky into the clouds into the gray and brown of the rocks and the green bushes. He keeps painting, but all is changing. The sky is no longer blue, like it's a bit of an accident, a mistake he's made. The colors course together. Look at what they've become. Is it mud or a sunset? Lines of sky now honeycomb, now long shadows. Like a slipping out of wet clothes will stop the sky turning to night. What bird is that singing at dusk? A thrush? It is a song of sand, now crimson, now rust. The day dying, turning dark. The thrush sings of dust, a saddest song, as the last colors rain into the night. Okay, so I've got a few more, but I don't know the time. What do you think?
Christine, go for it. Our watches are broken.
Your watches are broken. Okay, I'm just looking at I've got one. If I can find it now. It's called A Love Letter to the. I'll go back to the great grandfather. It's called A Love Letter to Great Grandfather. I weave your story row after row, like Penelope, undoing it again in the dark. I circle my world, writing threads, skeins, while you linger with a flagon of hope. All your stories, the wax, the wane of a century. I gather strands, unravel knots of days gone by, spectres of dreams, sirens of song. Now you are here, no longer as translucent as a ghost, far from where you rode your white horse. Here, like the crescent moon, the silver rim of who I am and where you've been. My trunk, it's not a box or a wagon. It's an old leather suitcase with straps and buckles. I've packed it to the brim with our most precious possessions, yours from a century ago and mine. I look up at the moon tonight, the same moon you saw from the veld. It's winding its way down a koppie on a dark morning. A man in the doorway. A dog lies sleeping at the drempel. Sun and moon both visible in the sky. Our stories, feathers of shades, sighs and signs. Skeins of ink remind me what I must do when I'm at a loss, or you are on a train or in the veld, when I can't find you in the tangle of trees, because despite that, my thoughts always lead to you. The place you have now come to, you call home, even though it's just a suitcase. The rain absorbed by cracks in the hide, but your writing collected together, home at last. In there you continue. You cross a bridge, a river, pick your way amongst old shadows. It's where you wake in the morning, where you sleep at night, how I know where to find you. Okay, and then this one, probably be the last one because it's quite long. It's called Ears. My ears to the ground now. I can see my long tail touch my wild ears, the cameel doring ear, Nefertiti's broken ear. Draw out the stories. There's my father, his ear velvet grey like the cameel doring, seed pod, deeply listening for rain. Secreted away mid-ear are my sister's voices three, different notes, alto, treble, contralto. Pull on those threads now, draw them out slowly, like the long, thin swabs the doctor stuffed into my skull when he drained my burst eardrums. Pull the threads gently. Strands of soft wool carry the sounds of my children, their playing, their laughter, their first words. Deep, where balance is tempered, the sound of a baby, perhaps me in a cot, or becoming a mother at 19, or my baby's cries, the gush of milk letting down. In there are nights, nights in the Kruger where nachappies shriek in soot-doering trees, hyenas call from afar. From my inner ear, you might grab hold of a river, the sound of the Vaal running over rapids. Pull on it, draw it out, a long ribbon. There's the call of the nightjar at dusk. Good Lord, deliver us. And the wood owl's woo-hoo, high-pitched resident of forest, woodland, and garden. Also there, a fat leopard toad, who after mating takes the long walk up to our garden where his raucous snores keep me awake. My mother's calling my name, Christine, her tone, and why I changed it to Christina. Deeper in my ear, much deeper, the sound of my father's voice, almost forgotten, his "my witkoppie," my darling. Okay, thank you, everyone. Thanks for listening.
Hey, thank you, Christine. That was a gorgeous reading. Could we please unmute and give Christine a hand?
Happy to do that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, we've reached that point in the evening where anyone who has comments or questions, now would be the time to raise a hand, and a digital one or actual one, and yeah, engage with what we've just heard. Harry has a hand. Go for it, Harry.
Two hands.
Two seconds.
Yeah. First of all, thank you, Christine. That was a lovely reading. I really enjoyed that. There's so much I could talk about. But there was one poem where I can't remember exactly the words. I have to paraphrase it. It says something. She writes to find the spaces between things. It's something like that. And I was reminded of I think it was Arthur Rubinstein, the pianist,
Oh,
used to say something like, any competent pianist can play the notes, but the pauses, the spaces between the notes, that's where the music lies.
yeah.
And I wondered if something like that was going through your mind when you think about the spaces and the pauses and finding things between things. I'm not expressing it very well, but have a go, please.
Yeah, I think those things are very important. I think art has taught me that particularly, and we talk about the shape of shadows, or negative spaces. So, you know, when you draw, when you don't try and draw the line here, you try and draw the shape of that space there. You know, so for me, both art and poetry have really taught me about the importance of the spaces. So we know from poetry that it's really important where you take your breath, and you know, and what it looks like on the page, the spaces around, the air around it. I think it's very important. You know, I think it's you know, we so often we so conditioned to focus on objects, on the product, and very often it's not there, it's around there somewhere. You know, so I'm very intrigued with spaces and shapes and things around the focus.
Yeah. I'd agree with you entirely. Thank you very much. You've said what I might have said about it as well. Thanks a lot.
I mean, in art also, we're often told to kind of look at something out of focus, or to kind of, you know, close your eyes and sort of, you know, look at things, and you see something completely different. And I think that's often how we should be looking at life too, you know, not focus so much on and just sort of look at life a little unfocused, take our glasses off, see more clearly.
And drink some of these as well. That helps.
Yeah,
Cheers.
Cheers, Harry.
Jacques, your hand is up.
Christine, that was such a wonderful reading, and I look forward to going back to those poems again and again. I was wondering at some point what it was exactly that haunts you so much about Willem, about your great-grandfather. And by the end, I had a feeling that it had something to do with his ability to map a course through the landscape, and to map a course sort of into a life after chaos. And that has something to do with why you love him so much. Am I on the right track?
Yeah. Yes, you totally are, Jacques. It's been a long road with Willem. He died before I was born, and I'm only getting to know him now. Today was the funeral of my aunt, who was his granddaughter, and she was the last link with him. So I mean, I feel pretty close to him because of this. You know, my father was his grandson, and she was his granddaughter. They were siblings. So I was thinking a lot of him today, and you know, why it's fallen on me to find him and to bring him back to the family. And at first I resisted it. So it was 1999 I first found this photograph, and which led me to the story and to finding his journals. And I think that a lot of it is, I mean, you know, if I psychoanalyze myself, my father Willem Hendrik, named for his grandfather, also fought a war. So both Willem Hendriks fought wars, and they both lost their wars. So Willem Hendrik's war was against the English. He was, in the Boer War in the Free State, and my father's war was an internal war, a mental war, and they both lost. And because I was 16 when my father died, I think I've carried the question in me for all these years, over 50 years, of why couldn't he start all over again? He was only 44, and, surely with some help, he could have started all over again. Things weren't, I can see now as an adult that things weren't completely disastrous. He could have started again. So I've carried that since I was a child. And then 20 years ago, when I discovered Willem and thought that it was that he was kind of pressing on me to write his story because he wanted to be published. And so my first reaction was, no, I want to be published first. Oh, you can wait. But actually now, 20 years later, I feel such I just feel so tender towards him, because I think what he's done for me is that he has become the hero that my father couldn't be. He has become the hero that failed and that got up and started all over again and succeeded by living his life, by being a good citizen, very community so conscious, and succeeding, not dying on purpose. So and then the other thing that he's done is he's really connected me back to not only my own family history, but to my Afrikaner roots. My father was an Afrikaner, and also to the country's roots, because if I had done this 20 years ago, I don't think I would be as conscious of the country that his story happened in, and the country that I now live in 2025. And I need to take into account the country I live in now to tell his story. And it's a different way of telling. I'm not writing another Boer War story. I'm really writing a reflection of the learning that he's, that I'm doing by reading about him and about those times. And the sort of realization that in 1899, South Africa was not a country. I mean, it was a British colony, and it had 2 Boer War republics, and it had the dispossessed that no one mentions, So, I'm trying to write about him and interrogate him and challenge him, and you write a counter memoir, actually. So he's I'm learning so much, and I'm so grateful to him. He's really become the hero that I suppose I always longed for.
And you in the same way that you are finding him, he's also found you.
Yeah.
He's sort of found you in a way. Said, you tell my story.
Yeah, he definitely. I was a sucker that I think I'm the only one in the family that kind of was open to it. But what's happened is that since this connection with him, I found, without looking for it, I found cousins. So his eldest son, Max, his great granddaughters live in Hermanus, and I didn't find them by seeking for them. They just sort of arrived, and it just been the most amazing connection with them. Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting, because in a way it feels like I can talk back to him and say, look what's happened in this country. Look where we are. Look how different things are. And I've had this history of being born in the 50s and living through apartheid, at its worst, and being able to see it from the other side, which he hadn't even, 1948 happened after he died. So yeah, just the whole history that I'm learning, and then teaching my grandsons are particularly interested in the story. So that's lovely for them to hear it as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jacques. Thank you, Christine. Carrie, I see your hand up. Hi.
Hi. I'll just
Hi.
put my video on for a moment. Hi, Christine.
Hi, Carrie.
Thank you so much. That was really wonderful. That was very special. I just, not really a question, just a couple of comments. I just wanted to say how much I love the specificity in your images, naming the trees, naming the birds. It's just so evocative. And I don't know that part of the country, but now it makes me want to go and see, what does a soetdoring look like? What does, it's really beautiful. And just listening to you talk about your grandfather, it's your grandfather, right?
Raymon's grandfather.
I'm also great-grandfather. I'm also working with memories and photographs at the moment in my writing. And that notion of being in conversation with an ancestor that you never met is so, I don't even know what the word is. It's like it opens a doorway in your own mind and heart that you didn't even know was there somehow. Yeah, and it's just very powerful to hear you talk about it and write about it. And it's just fascinating to see how you like you said, that poem about the threads, you kind of pull on one thread and there's just all these other threads that just start to kind of unravel and open up. Yeah, I'm not being very clear, and I'm not being very eloquent or articulating what I want to say well, but yeah, I just want to say it was very touching. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. I really appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. Frank, hi.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Frank.
Yeah, thanks so much, Christine, for that. I want to just make a comment about your creative process. And I thought that was very interesting. I think the thing about dealing with, I suppose, writing the past, writing about things that have happened and people that existed, obviously it's quite important because there's that story that's being recovered. But when you want to catapult it into art, I think the whole idea of a creative process that can get you to more abstraction or to more into the subconscious, more important. And so when you were describing how you were doing things, making things with your hands, I could see the way that leads one to a different place that's much, much deeper. And then obviously one comes back to the story, to the concrete, to Willem, to yourself, to that whole dialogue. And I thought that was really powerful and really deepened it. So the poems are by far not really narrative poems. So, and then I think with the comment by Carrie as well, the way in which you work with the specificity that stays with one, like the horse, the landscapes, and so on. I think those things are quite powerful there as well. And they also take us into that beyond, which is that process of the deepening. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Frank. Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate your comments. It's so true. I mean, the creative process, I think we all experience it at some level or another, but I'm sort of working with it so much and so consciously. or consciously, but to really loosen the unconscious. And I think when you do that, you know, if you can just allow yourself to just let things happen, it's just so exciting when they do, and that you're not controlling it. It just, you know, surprises come and happy accidents.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you, Christine. We've had a lot of interesting questions. Christine, I think every time I've heard you read, I've had a sense of your adventurousness, and this time it's the art and I felt that whatever you read this evening, you brought it closer to us, and made it visceral, made it tangible. So I'm just making comments, really. I really appreciate that about your writing, that you always bring the reader in, almost regardless of the theme or the, and then to sort of chime in with what Harry said, I also appreciate your unhurried reading. I always have the feeling that these threads that you're drawing out, or that are drawing you into places, yeah, it's always done gently, slowly. It's just very rewarding to be at the listening end, or the reading end of that. And yeah, I particularly liked the poem about the ears and double exposure, and depends on the day. There were others, but it was a fascinating and beautiful reading. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm sorry I couldn't get the slides, the Google photographs to work. I have to find a way.
No worries.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a Luddite. I actually can do these things, but technology is kind of moving so fast. I can't keep up with it.
But you said you had a link that you could maybe share with people.
I can share a link to some Google photo. I'll put an album together and send a link to you if you want to look at them. I mean, it's not art in a capital A at anything, and I've had to let go of the shame of not being, you know, the proper artist, but it's such a fascinating process to use art, you know, to discover stuff and to really unleash the creative side of one. And I would encourage all of you to just, if you have the urge, just to find some way you can just you know, play with that mediums. I mean, I use everything, stones and sand and paint and drawing and everything. It's wonderful.
Yeah. Thank you. Carrie, you have another question.
No, it was just a comment on what you just said, Christine. A proper artist. What is a proper artist?
Yeah.
I think you are a proper artist. It's not about producing something that, a Pieta or Michelangelo sculpture or something like that. What you're doing is proper art. And I think we are so quick to judge ourselves and criticize ourselves and compare ourselves to some ideal that we have in our minds and hearts. And no, I think, you know, sitting down with paper and pen or whatever your process is, that is proper art. So yeah.
Thank you, Carrie. Yeah, it's taken me a long time to accept that, you know, what I need is not the product. I need the process, and the process is so rich, and you know, it helps me in all kinds of ways, but certainly it enriches my poetry and makes it better, I think. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. Thank you, Christine. Liz, hi.
Hi. Thank you, Christine. Lovely poems. I was particularly moved by well, the two Gaza poems, one where you use your art, making or swaddling the babies. I found that incredibly powerful. And I think it brought you closer to your despair and helplessness, and just lovely. Also, finding the glimmer of hope in the despair, shifting rubble and singing a lullaby. I mean, the life and the spirit goes on. It's not dead, which is wonderful. I also loved Ears because of the collection of psalms. And what you read was a great variety. I mean, from Willem to Gaza to, the earth. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I must say that, I participate in Chantel's wonderful monthly workshops, and we also go to the Grail for writing retreats. And a lot of these poems actually came out of her prompts, and The Ears was one of them that came out of that at the Grail, where she read us a poem about things found in, the poet wrote a poem about things found in the ear. And so I just took that and went on, and it was very rich, a very rich exercise and exploration.
Right. Well, it worked. A beautiful one.
Yeah.
If I can just add quickly to what you were saying, Liz, about the Gaza. And there was that one image you had of the dandelion. And I think, that just standing out, and that just remains with one. And I mean, the thing about the dandelion, it's one of those things where, it's a plant that's actually, not looked at in the same way, at the same level as the other plants. But actually, the dandelion has a lot to offer. And you brought out the colors and the detail of that so much as well. So I think the kind of the symbolic things that run right through all the poems you've read, I think that they just stand out and really make whatever the set of poems you are and how you're going to put them together makes the collection, if it's all going to be a collection, quite outstanding.
Thank you, Frank. The dandelion's a fascinating plant. I just love how, nature, by the time the Gazians were allowed back to Gaza, there were trees growing in the rubble, and big plants already, and that how nature overcomes. And the dandelion is an edible plant, and you can eat the leaves. The French eat them in salads and things, and it's just that nature. Like Harry, I'm also very attached to nature, and it's just so. It's the only hope we've got if we can see how nature can actually recover. Then maybe we can too.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you, Liz. Thanks everyone for being here. And thank you, Christine. I don't know if you can see the comments in the chat. Some people left comments.
Oh, I'll have a look. Thank you, everyone.
Could we have another round for Christine? Another round of appreciation for what we just heard.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. It was just lovely. You made me feel it so at ease, and I didn't get into too much of a state about not being able to get the pictures up. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for the comment. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to stop recording. See if this works. Sorry, just a moment. It doesn't seem to be stopping the recording.